Hello. Well, it looks like I'm doing another question for atheist video. There's just something about them that are so tempting. So I guess I haven't quite gotten it out of my system yet. Anyways, this one is in response to Dustin Video's 10 questions every atheist must answer. How can I resist that commandment? Honestly, I'm surprised at some of the questions that need to be asked, so I'm going to try to move through this with some fairly simple answers. The first question is, if God isn't real, then what point is there to life? Well, there is no God and there is no point to life. Taking point to mean purpose, this is a human concept, and so the purpose is whatever you decide to make life's purpose. Life isn't all about God, and if you can't see beyond God, then you need to get out and enjoy life a little more. Second question, if the Big Bang created everything, then what created the Big Bang? It's possible that nothing created the Big Bang. Scientists don't have the answers to everything yet, so it's not even definite the Big Bang is how it all began, or even if that's when it all began. The fact of the matter is, you couldn't know either. Nobody could, because nobody was there. At least scientists, though, collect evidence in support of their theories. What evidence is there that God had anything to do with creation, besides what the Bible says? Men wrote the Bible, and if what it says is evidence, then I can write anything and claim its truth because it is written. I look really green in this video, I'm not sure why. Third question. Every part of our body works together, each of us has one mouth, and we have bones. How do you explain this? My answer is a two-part answer. The first part is evolution, and the second part is genetics. The reason we all have mouths and bones and everything else is because we all share DNA. If you need an explanation of what DNA is, then please spend some time in a third grade science class. Why does everything work together? Well, if everything didn't work together, we wouldn't be able to live. So, evolutionarily speaking, the only creatures that survived long enough to have offspring and pass on their genes are the ones with bodies that work. That's the ultra-simple explanation of evolution. And of course, there are times when all of our parts don't work together, which happens all the time. And if that's the case, we either need serious medical attention or we die. The fourth question, if you can believe it, is, if we evolved from animals, then how come there is no proof? There is, in fact, bountiful and overwhelming evidence for this process. So I suggest you take your head out of the sand and do a little bit of research. Fifth question. If we evolved from apes, then how come there's no fossils of humans with tails? And how come none of us are evolving now? The common theory is that we share a common ancestor with apes. And as far as I know, it hasn't been precisely isolated yet, which is why they call it the missing link. We might not even have fossils that go all the way back because over the millions of years of our evolution, things have tended to deteriorate. And that's not to say there isn't a great deal of fossil record detailing the process of human evolution. I might even be making myself sound like an idiot because I know we have dinosaur bones, and maybe it's because the dinosaur bones are much bigger, but quite honestly, this isn't my field of study, so I can't claim to know everything about fossil record. What I can say is that the lack of fossils of humans with tails doesn't necessarily mean anything. In fact, scientists probably aren't even looking for a fossil of humans with tails. People are still evolving, but drastic changes are not something you're likely to see in your lifetime, nor in many lifetimes. It's a very slow process. That being said, there are clear ways of demonstrating how evolution is at work. If you know a bit about how babies are made, then you know that evolution is at work. Upon conception, the genetic code of mommy and daddy combine in a new way to form the baby's DNA. That process includes within it the potential for anomalous combinations and mutations, which are completely random changes. These changes could be incredibly small, but they may do something like give the child a larger lung capacity so he can hold his breath longer. So if the child ever falls underwater, then he might live where others would die because he can hold his breath long enough to be saved. This basic hypothetical demonstrates evolution. Mutations that help a creature survive stick around, whereas mutations that get creatures killed are naturally weeded out. Consider male pattern baldness for another example. Why do some men keep their hair and some men lose it? Ultimately, it's a difference in their genetics. For humans, the difference probably has no benefit or detriment, but who knows? In the future, maybe no one will have hair because of this. Another great example are all the genetic diseases that plague humanity. These are essentially mutations, whether it's trisomy 21 or muscular dystrophy, and these of course are very detrimental to our survival. These are cases where all of our body parts don't work together. Without modern civilization, most of these people probably would have died. Even now, it's far less likely that most of these people will pass on their genes. But again, humans could be a special case because we have technology that can help almost anyone survive, no matter their ill fortune. So if you just look around, it is clear that evolution is still at work. Question 6. If the Big Bang were true, then how come there is no proof? This goes back to question 2. There is no proof of the Big Bang, no more than there is proof that God created the universe, except for what the Bible says. The difference is that scientists collect evidence of the Big Bang, and that is why they believe in the Big Bang, because there is evidence suggesting that theory. And again, that might not be what happened, but that's what the evidence suggests based on what we know so far. And again, you can learn about this by reading your science books. In fact, I recently read an article in Scientific American talking about how the universe might be these two brains, which are basically these two layers of the universe, and that they get closer and closer together and collide and cause a big bang, and then drift apart again, and then eventually come back together and collide again and create another big bang. So this could be some sort of cyclical theory. The point being that scientists are always collecting evidence and always expanding their knowledge and their ideas about how things happen. So where cosmology and astronomy will change over time and get closer and closer to the truth, the Bible is never going to change. It's always going to say the same thing. So science might one day have proof, and it's always working towards that. It seems that religion and Christianity are actually working against that, or at least prohibiting that by keeping people's minds closed to science. Question 7. How do you explain the Red Sea and all the remains of chariots at the bottom and horses and even people? Well, to the first part of your question, I would use geography to explain the Red Sea. As I understand it, it is a fairly long and narrow sea between the eastern shore of Africa and the Arabian Peninsula. As for all the other stuff, while I myself am unaware of the wealth of horses and people and chariots found at the bottom of the Red Sea, I would explain this using archaeology. Atheists don't deny the past, and certainly there are clues to the past all over the world, and chariots being found and the remains of people and horses certainly is part of that past. Whatever people find at the bottom of the Red Sea or anywhere else has nothing to do with the existence of God, but the existence of an archaeological record of the past. I think it's possible the Bible refers to some actual historical events, but that still doesn't justify a wholesale gullibility towards the book. Question 8. How do you explain that everything works together? The sun is just the right distance away from us. Again, the very basic answer is that everything has to work together or nothing would exist. It wouldn't be possible. It's not that the universe was set up perfectly, but that it developed in the only way possible given the laws of the universe in which we exist. Think of a growing plant which needs a particular temperature, habitat, and amount of light and moisture. Once it grows, we don't say that its environment must have been set up perfectly for it to grow. We say that it grew in the particular way that its environment demanded. It had no choice but to follow the pre-existing rules in order to exist. Question 9. You can't see the wind. Does that mean that it doesn't exist? And if it does exist, then why can't God? We can see the wind. You can see it blow through the trees, twirl through smoke, and pick up snow and make it drift. We can measure the wind, but can you measure God? And if you can't measure something or provide evidence of something, how can you prove it exists? Question 10. There's proof of a worldwide flood in fossils. How do you explain that humans are still alive? There may have been massive floods in the past. One theory would be when the Ice Age ended and all that ice was going into the ocean, raising the sea level. That would cause massive worldwide floods. How did people survive? Well, it probably just didn't kill everyone if these massive floods occurred. Things that occur on the planet that have a natural explanation say nothing about the existence of God. Dustin Videos. I urge you not to rely on YouTube for your education. Do some reading, look into science. All these answers are there. You must use the intellect that all people are provided and take personal responsibility for learning the truth. Never depend on people for truth who have not themselves opened their minds to reason, logic, and science.